Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folarin. Hope you had a great weekend, and it was the weekend of 100 days. 100 days in office of President Muhammadu Buhari. Okay, all of that is over and done with now, looking into the future. So we're saying, okay, Buhari beyond 100 days. What does this show us? Morning shows the day. We've seen the morning in the past 3 months. Buhari has been at it, and his team. There's so much out there that has to be done. A lot of it has been stated that will be done. There is other stuff that is still a work in progress. Investigations continue to the extent of the challenges that we have to overcome before we reach where we want to be in Nigeria. Okay, my guests this morning, a couple of gentlemen. Let's start off with Mr. Yemi Mapaderun. Mr. Yemi Mapaderun, you know, I always introduce him as Registrar, Institute of Strategic Management of Nigeria. Well, that stopped a little while back, but he still is Registrar. He is Mr. Yemi Mapaderun, Registrar, Nigerian Air Force School of Finance and Accounts in Badagry. Thank you very much for coming on, Yemi.
Thank you very much for having me. My pleasure.
Indeed. And Mr. Tony Ashamu, well, Mr. Tony Ashamu, he keeps a keen eye on the polity. He's a politician and an entrepreneur as well. Thank you very much for coming on, Mr. Ashamu.
Thank you for having me.
And the politician part of it, you being an entrepreneur and all, Nigerians need deep pockets if they're going to contest public office, so you probably are preparing for that.
So say you. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. You're doing us the favor. Let me start off, Yemi. The whole brouhaha, APC is not too crazy about this whole 100 days, or shall I say Buhari as a person is not too crazy on the whole 100 days thing, but if it's a convention we must go through, by all means, be my guest. But it does seem as if the president and his team seem to have their, you know, their head down, really. They have their head down, you know, getting on with it while the rest of it continues. Give me your impression of what it's going to look like going forward, given what we have seen. We've seen 100 days of Buhari. Then what are your expectations and hopes for beyond 100 days of Buhari?
Well, thank you very much. Before looking at the post 100 days, I think it is important to situate what has transpired really in the first 100 days, even if as a matter of summary. Clearly, the president, you know, made it very clear at the Chatham House that he is not given to this issue of, you know, 100 days. But like you said, that become a convention. Yeah. Now he's the president. Even if he's not the one pushing, you know, this 100 days, the adversaries are doing it. The masses are asking, you know. And
people have just become used to the idea. All things American.
Don't forget that, you know, in the recent past, we've actually had some administrations at state level that marked every 100 days, you know, in office. So it's becoming more and more of, you know, a way of benchmarking and trying to see how far we've gone, you know, in the journey. Obviously, there are people from different divides who view the first 100 days from different perspectives. But for me, you know, as an analyst, as a strategist, you remember I was here the first 30 days, you know, of the president, and I expressed my surprise, not disappointment, surprise that as at that time, the president had not, you know, appointed ministers. And 70 more days down the line, the president still has not appointed ministers. And I remember saying at that occasion that for me, it would be okay if it's part of a strategy, you know, a deliberate strategy by the president to put a few things, you know, in place before actually announcing nominees for ministerial appointment. And I think in the last 100 days, it's been clear to the, you know, perhaps every Nigerian that this was actually a deliberate measure. It was not a prevarication on the part of the president. It was not a lack of conviction in the kind of people that he wanted, you know, to occupy those offices. And of course, between then and now, we've seen a lot.
Neither was it cluelessness.
Neither was it cluelessness, because you could see that there was a deliberate attempt by him to have hands-on by relating with the permanent secretaries, who, interestingly, actually the chief, you know, accounting officers of the ministries. The ministers are actually just political appointees. Let me remove the just. They are political appointees. So, but they are the technocrats. Yes. And he needed to know, a leader, don't forget that this is a man who had been in power before, albeit as a military man, 32 years, earlier. And at that point, and some of the things people held against him is the fact that a lot of things were done with immediate effect and automatic alacrity kind of thing. So you do not expect the same person having the same opportunity 3 decades later to just step on the ground, anyhow.
It can't even be done. He's become a Democrat.
Because
he was not a Democrat then, 32 years ago, but today he's a Democrat.
And do not also forget, because really the greatest flags that the president had received is not that he's no longer the person we used to know, but that he's slow. But before the election, and immediately after the election, people said, look, we need a Democrat, not a military person. We need somebody who will allow due process, to take its course. And I think that is exactly what the president is doing. Do not forget, it has to be, once beaten, twice shy.
I hear you. Okay, we're going to come back to it. And, Tony, as you know, I don't know if it was keyed to coincide with 100 days, but we're also having reports that former President Jonathan has indeed been writing some members of the new, administration, some of them that have crossed over from his to this administration, and using them as an indication of how good a team he had, and quite frankly, the implication is in there that how invaluable his administration was to whatever hope Nigerians are now saying is within grasp.
I think with the former president, it's not about how good of a team that you have, but I think it's about how you can wield the presidential powers to leverage that and make the country great in form of policies and doing some bunch of other things. I want to talk about this whole 100 days mantra, and I think it's becoming more of a cliche, which is important. I mean, I want to segue that into, like, in business, right? There's something they call the first 90 days, which is like a common best practice. If you, like, there's a new MD of a organization, the first 90 days is very critical. And I think the signal that needs to be set is, of course, the most important thing you're going to be able to do is build your team. If you inherit a lot of stuff from the past, you need to be able to make sure you build a team, and that should be a leader's job. Is just to, you have to make sure you form that core team that will make sure that your agendas can be executed. And looking just for the past couple of months, I think our president has been doing a very good job at that. I mean, I want to kind of just cite an example of what has happened with the, well, most people know as NEPA, or the generating and the distribution companies in NEPA. I mean, what has really changed? I don't think like billions of dollars have been invested into our power grids since President Buhari became president. But the signaling that we had, there's a new sheriff in town, and he means business and he wants things to be done right. I think that has improved electrics. I mean, I think when now, the last time I think we had this conversation on this show, I think we were about 1,800 megawatt. Now we're around 4,000, 3,000, and I think that's progress. And those are the things. And now in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure we're going to have the management team around the president. And those should be people that will set policies that will propel Nigeria to the next height.
Yes, and the president has really, Yemi, been working at this. This is what he's been working at, coming up with the team that he requires to take us to, the new destination. People talk about a new sheriff in town and all of that. But the way Nigeria is perceived globally, in other words, Nigeria's, so to say, corporate image, would you say has been enhanced since the inauguration of this administration?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the changes, that Nigeria has experienced since President Buhari took over. Don't forget that it doesn't really matter how well you are doing, globally. If the superpowers, well, for now, we call them, the G7 and co, the G8, before Russia, took a backseat, and the rest of it, seem to be more open to Nigeria. Things got so bad that even by the body language and the pronouncements of the past administration, a lot of excuses were given why Nigeria had some of the challenges that we had, and particularly with regard to security. And that is because certain countries were unable or were unwilling, to sell arms to Nigeria. And you begin to ask yourself, why they're not going to give those arms for free? We're going to pay for it. So why were they not willing, to sell to us? All that is behind us now. I think the perception of Nigeria now, and candidly, we do not owe this only to, President Buhari. Curiously, part of it is actually owed to President Jonathan because of the way and manner, he made the conduct of the last election to be, acceptable, and the way he actually accepted, defeat and congratulated, the president-elect at that time. So all of that, coupled with the perception of, President Buhari as a man of character, a man of integrity, and the rest of it, actually have come together to make Nigeria more acceptable globally. And beyond that, it is now important that Nigeria leverage that acceptance
indeed,
for the benefit of Nigerians.
Indeed, and the security is also key. He spoke about security. That is, well, just about every president, security is important to them. Jonathan, it was important to him. In fact, if wishes were horses, then beggars would have ridden in President Jonathan's time regarding getting back our Chibok girls. In fact, the president, in his belief on the resources and the men and the materials at his disposal, actually, said to us that very, very shortly we would get the girls back. It didn't happen till he had to leave office. Now, the way it is, it hasn't happened either in the first 100 days of Buhari. We've just said the corporate image of Nigeria has gone, sky high. Do you think that could be a festering sore? The fact that we don't have the girls yet, even as we are told from the presidency that they've not pushed them to the back burner, but the girls still aren't back yet.
It's something that breaks my heart that these girls are still missing, and we still can't find it. And my heart goes out to the family of these young girls. But ultimately, I mean, Nigeria got so bad to a point whereby America had an embargo to sell arms to Nigeria, the giant of Africa. And this is the most populous country in Africa. I mean, 180, 170 million people. If Nigeria falls aside and breaks up, it's not good for the global polity. So having said that, I mean, in less than 100 days, the People's President, General Buhari, has been able to get us back on track. And in 2015, the conversation we should be having should not be the likes of Boko Haram taking preeminence in your domain. And this is the era whereby we have technologies whereby if you live in just one room, let's say 12 by 12 feet room, there are technologies today that can find you and send a drone to a point whereby the people surrounding your other rooms are not going to get affected. So why did Boko Haram get so emboldened that they became to actually control 1/5 of one part of Nigeria? So having said that, I think the fact that now we're back in the good books of the Global Committee of Nations. And I think also another thing, talking about corruption, Americans' issue initially was this, Ali Burton case. We reported and we made this complaints, and they actually tried their own people. There are American citizens currently in jail. Currently, they have been censored because of this whole Ali Burton case. Now, on the flip side, Nigeria, what have you done to all the people that were involved in this multi-billion-dollar scam? I haven't said that. I think finally now that...
And it's sorry to interrupt. Actually, it's a good point, I think, because we've just spoken about our corporate image and all of that. And talking about Halliburton, there still is the embarrassment of people that were co-accused with Nigerians have actually admitted culpability have been sentenced. I think some of them have even finished the sentence. And nothing, there has been no legal action in Nigeria.
And this is where I'm going with that. This is America's and President Obama's fear initially about Nigeria is, you want me to repatriate money from my country and get you back your money for supposedly corrupt officials. If I give you back this money, the money is supposed to go back to the poor people for you to do things that will make your country go forward. What if that money goes back to private pockets of another corrupt? So you see this vicious circle going on, and that sends a bad president.
And there's still this whole matter about we've got to prove ourselves beyond the talk. Everybody is now resting, as it were, on the integrity, the personal integrity and the perception of the president. But beyond that now, we now have to see some action. Perhaps, Yemi, we are seeing the workings out, because there must be preparation for every action. So we're seeing the preparation of this kind of action in the area of corruption. We've been hearing a lot, so much so that the opposition is saying that, look, this is akin to almost trial by newspapers. Why don't you just do it? We've heard all of that. But the presidency seems to be working at it and taking other measures. I just read recently, you must have seen it too over the weekend, that the government has frozen the accounts of some people. It must be because of stupendous amounts of money in those accounts, and that's always a danger depending on the disposition of whoever owns the account. So there's all of that going on. There's a lot of work going on in security, much of it delicate and complex, right? Especially since we also have to worry about fundamental human rights of everybody, and you're accused, you've got to prove.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the problems we had, you know, since 2002, talking about anti-corruption or trials of, you know, supposedly or allegedly corrupt people, is the fact that we've really not been able to secure, you know, convictions. When I say we've not been able to secure conviction, I'm not talking about those who defrauded somebody of $1 million or $2 million naira. It's bad enough. But I'm talking about, you know, the strategically corrupt people, those whose corrupt acts have had, you know, negative impact on the general economy. You don't have any big fish in any prison in Nigeria as we speak. But when you go to UK, you had somebody who was even calling the shots here politically in a particular party, a former governor. But virtually his entire clique, you know, is in jail in the United Kingdom. And they are not even about to let him go.
Do you think those kind of days are over? Nigerian politics being what it is, where there always will be, excuse the term, a cabal, quite frankly, of a handful of people that really determine, almost like the Nigerian version of the, what is it, Illuminati, as it were. Do you think anything's about to change very soon?
I'm not going to pretend. You know, like even Ribadu himself said, and a lot of people have said, when you fight corruption, corruption is going to fight back. They're not going to sit hands akimbo. We've seen it in all parts of the world, the drug cartel in Mexico and Colombia, you know, having even their own armies. And that is why leaving, you know, large amounts of money in the hands of a few people, it's a big security, you know, risk, you know, to any nation. And that, you see, this whole talk about anti-corruption has a lot of connotations. It's not just about stopping people from stealing. What do they deploy this? These monies become, you know, assets that can be used even against the state, you know. Like you said, depending on in whose hands those monies are. So, so for me, really, people have said, oh, we're just talking about, you know, corruption. The last government was the most corrupt. Nobody has been taken to court. I think it is important that this administration gets their evidence right, get the prosecutorial team in place, so that you won't be in court endlessly for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and at the end of the day, the suspect is let go, like we have seen in the recent past. So that is why I think, like you said, a lot of work must be going on at the background. And I think we may not really get to see some, you know, movement in the issue of anti-corruption in terms of prosecuting people until you have an attorney general in place. And I suspect that in the next 1 or 2 weeks, all of that should be in place. Indeed. And coming back to the issue of the Chibok girls, I think what we need to do now is to close that issue. You know, it's no longer about, are these girls alive, where are they, what are they doing? It's a function of letting Nigerians know what exactly happened and what is the fate of these girls.
We need closure.
We need closure.
We need closure
look,
on
look,
that
look at the issue
particular...
of the Malaysia air crash.
Yes.
I mean, a plane went down. Everybody knew that there wouldn't have been any survivors. But there was, continuous and deliberate search to at least get the debris of this plane so that we can say, as a matter of fact, that this plane didn't just disappear. It actually crashed. And that is what you saw, 2 years after the crash. Now we've just seen a wing of that aircraft.
Tony, continuing beyond 100 days of Buhari, the morning shows the day, hopefully. We've seen the seriousness of purpose that is being brought to bear on the task. We've been promised ministers in September. So Yemi has said in the next 2 weeks, well, let's even give the whole 30 days, but let it be in September. So this will come. Are you optimistic of... are you optimistic that what this would seem to indicate is that it has to be a sterling team, and because we've waited this long for it, one. Two, it puts whoever is on that team under immense pressure to, quote-unquote, behave. Because you are a product, Nigerians have been wanting to know who you were going to be. Now that you've arrived, we're assuming you passed through that lengthy process of sifting, and the president finally, in sending your name to the National Assembly for approval, has decided that you're one of the good ones. Now, it's like there's extra pressure that you're not allowed to turn bad. You're not allowed to go there. Do you think it's going to have that effect and help the ministers as well? Because, sorry, as a little addition, I was reading the paper somewhere that state governors refused to follow suit of the president and the vice president declaring their happy, as publicly saying, each man to his own, that kind of a thing. But that little joke apart.
I think, well said. I think it's already doing that because in our circle of, politicians, we have some politicians that are not even interested in any appointments anymore. and that is
say, look, if the kitchen is going to be this hot, maybe let's just stay in the dining room here.
But this is my intake into this. It's important we talk about corruption, but corruption is half of the problem. The real mandate that the masses gave the APC through our president is simply to make sure we lift millions of Nigerians out of poverty. And how do we do that? I always say this, like, look, if one company in America, say Facebook or Google, is declaring $50 billion in profit in 1 year, and we're talking about chasing some couple of billions, it's important we set that because, and this is, we need to set the tone that the issue, we don't have issues with rich people in Nigeria. The problem is not, they are illustrious, industrious, and as a matter of fact, the last time when President Obama was in, I think it was Ethiopia, in the UN summit, he made a statement that Nigerians are actually one of the most industrious people that he knows, or traders. Ultimately, we have bright brains in Nigeria. How do we make Nigeria a conducive environment? And how do we get a bunch of millions of Nigerians in poverty right now, get them out? Again, corruption is half of it. The other part of it, which the team should be, it should be their focus to make sure that policies are put in place and corruption does not, because America, for example, I want to make an example, China and USA. The Chinese model of doing businesses with Africa is very myopic and it has its pluses and minuses. America's model of doing businesses, because America, for example, would not do business with you if they can't trust that there's due diligence and there's no corruption, at least on the surface and on your accounting papers and books. Nigeria, we cannot quantify how much we have lost. Nigerians in America, Nigerians in diaspora, foreign direct investment that's supposed to come to Nigeria.
Well, it's looking like you seem to support American, FDI better than Chinese,
Let's talk about, because this is...
And I don't know, it's been said that the Chinese will say, let's talk one-on-one, no conditions. Let's just look at the mutual benefit thing. America said, now, here are the conditions, 1, 2, 17. Let's work on those 17 ones.
So this is actually a very great policy direction. And this is our job as Nigerians, to protect Nigeria and make sure whoever is bringing investment or bringing whatever to us, we vet them and make sure that it benefits us first. It's my job, it's our job to do that. Ultimately, When America gives you stuff, there's transparency. Okay, so most of the Chinese contractors.
Transparency, man. There's transparency there too now.
So let me say this, this is not to.
No. No, it's just that, sorry to interrupt you, it's just that on Africa, on the African coast, increasingly, leaders are saying that, look, we can do business with China. We can do business with them. There's a mutual respect. We talk as, quote unquote, as equals. It's just, you're aware of this, of course.
I'm very aware of this.
Madame Sirleaf, for instance, she's a great fan, of Chinese investment, etc.
I believe there should be competition. We should be open to do business with the world. But this is my issue. When you're a country and you're coming to me and you want to build an infrastructure worth $20 billion for me, and you insist in the clauses that you have to bring all Chinese citizens to do the job, that on top of that, the manuscript, the engineering design of the job belongs to you. There's no intellectual, and one of the major issues in Nigeria is building capacity. We can't, so my thing is, it's our job. If China, Korea, America, Britain want to do business with us, whoever that is manning the policy or issuing those stuff should do the due diligence and make sure that we make ourselves, number one, lucrative to these people, and we can have options. All I'm saying is, Nigeria is a country and we have so much deep potentials.
Indeed.
Half of the problem is corruption and the other half is making sure that we can get people out of poverty and create jobs.
It's just that you've used us both halves, so there's nothing left. Otherwise, I would have said the other one is, well, if you say 1/3, the first third, the second third, perhaps the third, the last third might be getting the right people into the team, into Team Nigeria, which that's what I'm calling it for the moment. To getting the right people into Team Nigeria. I was saying the other time, maybe I'd like your comments on that too. The people that will emerge, we shall see them. And no doubt we're going to have this conversation again. We shall be evaluating them. Say, oh, there will be a matter of, so this is what we're waiting 100 days for. So now let's look at the value of what we have. Let me come back to that and then I'll get your comments. I've got to go to commercial break now. Okay. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.